How come so many of these massive companies decide to release live service games and then talk up to all of us how live service is great? It means we'll constantly get content and updates. And then it seems they've really been in no way prepared to actually follow through on that promise. Well, one game that's been getting a hell of a lot of criticism in this area, of course, is Halo Infinite. And as much as I love how that game plays, it is fair to say that it's a little bit strange how lackluster the content offering has been, given the way that this was pitched as a free-to-play live service.
Yep. And the fun thing about this, the Halo specifically, because obviously it happens elsewhere, it happens in Battlefield, it happens in a whole bunch of different genres and games. There's something specifically about Microsoft that people have been talking about in the context of Halo and 343, that if you look at how they interact with developers, and, you know, basically if you're wondering, why is there never any content after a game's out? I think we actually have a fairly definitive answer today.
Yeah. So we'll go through this. Here's what a frustrated Reddit user posted. I honestly wish they would come out and say, due to staff shortage restraints as of late, this has caused a fair amount of delays on our side, and we apologize. Why would somebody say that? Why would somebody assume that there's a staff shortage? Well, Sketch, who is the community manager for 343, he actually replied to this. So let's get into his reply because it's interesting. He said, there are indeed a lot of challenges and constraints. We are certainly not happy to be unable to meet player and community expectations. It's a difficult situation that's going to take the team time to work through. So they released a live service game, but knew that their constraints meant they couldn't actually follow through?
Interesting.
How would that happen? Well, let's go on. Right now, the focus is on Season 2, and we'll have more to share on that in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, a lot of production planning, costing, planning, hiring, etc. is all happening, which doesn't really lend to detailed regular updates. We understand the community is out of patience, and frankly, I think understandably tired of words. We just need some time for the team to get the details sorted, and then we'll share as much as we can. Look at this and think, wait, what? Production planning, costing, hiring?
Isn't that what you do for a new game?
Yeah, and if you're doing a live service, and you've always planned to do a live service, then why are you only doing your planning, costing, planning, hiring, etc. after it's came out? This is a mystery.
Yep.
Very interesting mystery. And to look at how players are feeling, here are the mixed reviews for Halo Infinite. And I think we can all say that with the design of the maps that have came out, with the quality of the gameplay, this game should not be getting mixed on Steam.
No, not at all. That's the one thing when you go through the reviews. There are some balance concerns that are like they're approaching addressing and stuff like that, and some some ranked complaints and things. But generally speaking, most of the negativity is just, where's the content? This is billed as a live service. This is a free-to-play game that's shoveling microtransactions in my face. Where's the content? Where's the updates? I've been playing the same handful of maps for 5 months. What is going on?
Yeah.
I mean, there's the one here we have here is like, I picked this one because there's a lot of replies to it and people find it funny and helpful, but Halo Infinite is the girl that ghosted you. Like that's how people feel. They feel abandoned and betrayed by this game that they wanted to invest their time in, because that's one of the important things of having a battle pass. You're like, well, yeah, I want to invest my time in this game because that's how games are now, I guess. Time investments for you. And I don't see a future with it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is there's been plenty of communication. Some of it's actually been quite good.
Yeah, exceptional even.
You know, the TLDR for their Season 1 outcomes post is 422 words. And when you actually dive into it, is a full detailed post about changes they're making, things they're looking at, and overall what they're thinking about the game. It is a brilliant post. But still, it's not content.
Yeah, nothing's been done. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, now they say the live team has got updates coming in another blog post. But again, that's 5 months without meaningful updates to a live service. And if you take a look at the Steam graph, you don't really see fantastic news here, do you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'll look at the first month and go, well, okay, a big drop-off happens. That always happens to every game, especially free-to-play, sure. But it's more the continual bleed that's happening week after week after week. And it's now sort of stabilized, but it's stabilized fairly low at like 20,
10.
like 25k peak or something like that.
Yeah, and those numbers look more like, sort of 10, 15k.
Yeah, recently it's been
Current
like,
stats. That is great for so many games. But I think from Halo, people want to see a little bit more. And it's one of those things of, people want to feel confident that they are playing a game that they think is really going to go the distance. And it doesn't inspire great faith when there are issues. Because right now it has been, so it's the 23rd top played on Xbox. Like, this is Halo on Xbox.
Yeah.
And it's the 23rd top played. It's behind Guardians of the Galaxy, Football Manager, and Dead by Daylight. So how has a new Halo game on Xbox managed to not really go the distance, to not retain people as much?
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting that it's only one ahead of Call of Duty Vanguard, which Activision are obviously going like, this was a complete failure. This has not sold anything like we wanted. We've had to downgrade our expectations. And Halo's slightly ahead of it.
Yeah. And on the topic of staff constraints, people are beginning to think critically about this. Here's one.
Yep.
I just don't understand how live service content is only being planned and hired now when you announced the game as a live service 2 years ago. And then, just sort of more talk and rumors about why the hell it's going on like this. And this is where some information from Jason Schreier actually becomes apparent. At Microsoft, contractors can only work for 18 months max. They can come back after a 6-month break. Microsoft uses so many contractors that this limit leads to a lot of attrition. And for games that take 4+ years to make, like Halo Infinite, it has been disruptive. Now, what's the thing that they will have very much been working hard, maybe even crunching for? It will have been the release of that game.
Yep.
If they constantly have a weird quasi-shipid thesis going on within the development team, because one of the things we had heard via some previous leaking, which I'm not sure how rock solid it was, but it was to the effect of 343 disproportionately relies on contractors compared to the averages in the industry. That would potentially mean that they are disproportionately impacted by this contractor policy. Yep. Would that actually mean that a bunch of people who shipped the game then left? And could that actually explain why, seemingly they released with what they had, which was the bare minimum? They evidently didn't have a massive amount of maps and things like that, future content kind of already made and in the bank for updates. It's pretty rough.
Yep. So it was 2020, right? Whenever Halo had that release that everyone was laughing at. And then 343 had to go, oh shit, okay, well, and that was around July, August time, I believe.
Yeah.
Like, okay, shit, yeah, okay, we have to put so much effort into this, we have to do so much more. This isn't good. That was around 16, 17 months before the game released.
True.
So you hire a load of people after your showcase goes wrong to make the game better. That finishes in a year and a half when you release your game. All of your contractors, as per Microsoft rules, now have to go away. So there is a genuine case where there might just be a big 6-month window where they don't have any Halo Infinite developers. Not any, but the bulk of them that work.
Issues.
Yeah, where they have issues with all of the people who learned how to make Halo Infinite and its content for the last 18 months are now gone, and we can't get them back for 6 months. Which means this might just be a case of there's just a 6-month gap where there's going to be nothing made for this game, and they can't solve it.
Slipstream ain't an off-the-shelf engine.
Yep.
So there's going to be, skill lost there.
Yeah, so, and then if you're hiring a bunch of people up in, say, January and February, like new contractors, you have to train them. You have to train them in this stuff, while you're also internally we have some directional problems as well. It just seems like this idea of contractors not being allowed to stay and this over-reliance on them has completely destroyed any semblance of live services games had.
And that is so unfortunate, because a Halo Infinite that came out roaring with content probably would have done excellently. And that's what's, as a Halo fan, really fucking sad. Mm-hmm. Now, there's another franchise that I've also been a big, nearly lifelong fan of, and that is Battlefield. We have some new things from big leaker Tom Henderson, and potentially a bit rough. Okay, so on March 23rd, he posted an update. Despite the poor numbers that 2042 has generated, there is a new Battlefield title in active development, and EA is providing the resources needed to bring back the franchise. DICE is obligated to release 4 specialists and 4 battle passes for 2042, and we know that at least one map named Exposure will be coming in this summer. However, this is the bit where it feels pretty bad. A large portion of DICE has now moved on to the next title in the series, as is industry standard. However, there's still a strong and dedicated team working on Battlefield 2042 and its future content, despite concerns from the community that the game has been abandoned. Still, I think what you would have hoped is that while this is the industry standard, and while situations like with Battlefield 2042 unfortunately are actually becoming the industry standard, you would have hoped that a different standard response would have happened, such as sticking to the game, putting a lot of resources in, fixing it up, and actually earning people back. Doesn't exactly seem like that's what's going on. And to take a look at how this game is doing over on Steam, now you do have to remember, this game is available on Origin. People who have got the Origin, it's called EA Play or whatever, the premium, they'll be playing it over in the EA launcher. But still, like, we have recent reviews overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah, which has gotten worse. Like, recent reviews have gotten worse because obviously all reviews mostly negative. It's like weighted towards being worse now, and that just betrays that people are like, where's the... what? The game hasn't gotten worse, but their opinion of it's gotten worse because it's not getting any better.
And you think about the quantity of maps that came out for Battlefield 1 with its paid DLC bundles. There were loads of maps, and that felt pretty good as someone who played that game. I constantly got content, and that is something that Battlefield 5 and 2042 haven't really done. If you look at the player counts, 1606 right now, 2120, 24-hour peak. That is a awful number for Battlefield on Steam.
Yep.
And suffice to say, the reviews are exactly what you would expect for a situation like that. After going through so much goodwill with Battlefield 5, they've seemingly managed to follow it up by burning through even more goodwill, which will sting especially badly because they very much tried to pitch this as Battlefield 4 a bit in the future again. Hey, didn't you like Battlefield 4? To which everyone said yes, but unfortunately this game hasn't really measured up. Now, they do have a considerable update in April, but it's seemingly mostly just quality of life and bug fixes, which is important for a game like this where quality of life and bug fixes have hindered the experience, but people really just want more content. If they're anything like me, they're thinking of Battlefield 1, they're thinking about the amount of maps they got, and thinking, what the hell's happened?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing where that sounds good on paper. Like, okay, you're fixing all the bugs, you're fixing the problems, okay, the game will be better. But what you're saying is, oh yeah, sorry, you bought that game in like November, or maybe you pre-ordered it earlier. Yeah, we'll get around to delivering what you asked for in 6 months after launch, maybe?
Yeah.
Something like that. Don't worry about it, it'll be fine.
Hell, even with Halo, the co-op's been delayed.
Yeah, co-op's been delayed. Not substantially, but it's like, hey, co-op, Season 2 launch, that'll be when it is. Everyone's like, okay, sweet, that's good. And like, hey, co-op, still Season 2, just not a launch. Yeah. It'll be further along the season. And also with the extended Season 1, Forge will likely be at the end of the year. So you're like, sweet, yeah. Why can't you make your games? Literally, why can't you make your games?
Well, I have one pretty good number here from Tom Henderson. This is just a tweet that I think we should all remember.
Oh, yeah.
Still going in this, not finished yet, but out of 500 DICE employees researched so far, 87% joined during or after the development of Battlefield 1. 58% joined during the development of 2042. Is DICE still DICE? Is Infinity Ward still Infinity Ward?
Definitely not, but...
Yeah, and if you think about this, they obviously have attrition issues. If this is the sort of thing that's going on, how much knowledge has been lost? Like, just sheer the amount of time that it takes for somebody to get skilled up and fast and efficient when it comes to implementing in-engine, when it comes to mapping, all of these things. And if you see the teams bloating like this, because the other thing is a team increase happening during development of a project is really hard to do. It actually hurt Blizzard increasing the size of the World of Warcraft development team during Mists of Pandaria, which is something they publicized, but, you know, there's a few channels I've heard now that, like, yeah, that was a hard time in the dev team, just because it's really hard to get people up to speed.
Yeah.
And no doubt with a number like 58% joining the development of this game, these same issues will have been experienced here.
Yep. And there's one thing that this statistic, we don't know exactly because it's kind of hidden in the numbers, but, you know, obviously you go, well, team growth. Always team growth. You're expanding. You're making more content. You're trying to make bigger games. Obviously, you need more people to do the same amount of work because extra detail and high fidelity stuff. But also, it's like, how many of these are not just new hires? How many of them are replacing people who've left? Because I think whenever you're releasing games that are complete stinkers, who's going to want to hang around?
Yeah.
Like imagine you're like not like leadership, but you're just a grunt doing some mapping for Battlefield 2042. You tried your best. Obviously, engine problems, whatever else. You're like, well, that released. I'm not hanging around to fix this. Would you? Would you want to hang around? I mean, obviously, maybe, but it's not your responsibility. If it was leadership that caused the problems, you're like, well, I tried my best, and leadership clearly don't respect, us as a team. I'm just out of here.
Yeah, if someone who's like decently confident, knows they're good at what they do, they crunch like hell to actually ship. They see the community response. They perhaps understand that that's because of how management has done things. They're like, all right, well, I'm trying my best. These aren't great results. I could do better elsewhere. And also just the actual morale part, the emotional part. Yeah. That's got to feel really bad.
Yep.
Not to bring up WoW incessantly in every single video, but how many things have we heard about team attrition problems there in the context of 2 expansions being highly controversial in a row? And, no doubt this happens to so many other game titles as well.
Yeah, it's fair enough. Obviously, I don't think you can really blame people for this or fans for this because they feel hard done by. But there is that point of when you make something and someone's just like, or, not someone, but like, the overwhelming wave of people on the internet are like, this is shit. Well, you're going to be inherently discouraged from doing that again, which means you likely might end up leaving the industry. And that's no one's specific fault outside of leadership for forcing these bad products out. But it's like, it's just a real thing. It happens, for sure.
Anthem serves as an extreme example.
Yeah.
Really sold up as a big live service. They didn't have the goods to deliver a live service, and so the game fell over and died. Cyberpunk, pretty obvious. Overwatch, where'd the content go? Why'd the sequel take 6 years? Why did you do a sequel and you didn't really need to? Surely you could have put all those resources into etc., etc. And then we just have a little bonus for World of Warcraft here, just because of a fun anecdote. It's a bit of an infamous story, but it is that Molten Core, the first raid for World of Warcraft, it was built in a single week. So the only large raid in the game at release was built in a single week. Now, the other thing to remember is Molten Core is, in a way, pretty shit.
Oh yeah, it's like it was fine for the time, but it was clear like, oh yeah, they definitely had the ability to make this in a week because here's a bunch of like assets ready to have. Let's just drop in mobs and put in some loot. It'll do, and it had problems at launch as well. But it's that story that I think people are missing a lot, where it's like. Because, I mean, obviously, you don't want people to be crunching to make stuff because it's not their, profit that they're getting out of it. It's not for them. It's for the company. Where obviously back in the day, these were, people's, lives were on this game because it was so big and important. Even though it was Blizzard, it was, a small enough team. It's still that case of, man, where's the energy from leadership of just content? Content. People want content. People want things to do. People want novel, fun experiences. People want to do stuff. Hello, team. We'll greenlight a bunch of overtime, or we'll hire a bunch of extra people, or if you want to just take a week off, whatever super what we think is important, to just make content, just pump content, give players fun things to do. Then I think that would solve so much of the problem. But it doesn't happen anymore. People they seem to not be able to make content.
I think it's for so many reasons.
Yeah,
and that's the interesting thing. The fidelity of games has increased.
Of course, yeah.
Making a Molten Core is so much easier than making what a modern WoW dungeon or raid will look like.
For sure, yeah.
And you look at Zerath Mortis and it's like, shit, the Sepulchre of the first ones, right? The amount of just massive boss rooms, loads of art, so much work. You think about a lot of the, the games like Battlefield and stuff, it's like, maps are way more detailed now, and they're also massive. Yeah. This just takes longer. Combine that with all the other problems the industry's got, and you can kind of see that, as game fidelity and stuff like that's went up, it just takes longer to do shit. I mean, do you remember back in the day with a lot of older game titles where it's game comes out, you could get an expansion within a year or maybe next year.
God, those were good days.
Or just, think about, say, making a Doom map.
Yeah.
A lot faster. A lot faster, and that's why so many of those games had super vibrant mapping scenes that ended up creating, in a way, one of the next generations of game designers.
Yeah.
Whereas the iteration time and just the inherent cost because of fidelity increases and all of that stuff, well, I think it means there's more points. It's fundamentally more work. It's also more interdisciplinary work, I think, on making content for games these days. And I think that means that it leans so much less on like will and a burning drive to do shit, and it leans so much more on organizational excellence, which is maybe something we're not particularly great at as an industry yet.
I absolutely think that is pretty much most of the issue, where it's like, how many layers do you have to go through to get a map made in a game? How many hours of QA time do you need to set aside for like testing it completely? If you bother to test it completely, maybe you don't. How many hours do you need? How many designer hours? Especially when you're thinking about, you probably don't just have one designer putting stuff where he thinks it's cool. You probably have like the committee of designers going, well, how's this going to fit into our ranked ecosystem? It's going to work for every single weapon, as opposed to kind of, whatever works. And that's the thing. I don't want to say it's like, harken back to the glory days where shit just happened all the time. But it's like, there's definitely an industry problem to solve of, why can't you make stuff?
Yep. So what we need to do is de-evolve. We need to go back up the trees and just play boomer shooters.
Exactly.
Problem solved.
Or reuse tile sets, please. Relight tile sets different ways. Call them new maps. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I've been saying this for years in World of Warcraft. It's like, hey, your art's beautiful. You can make me do this same tile set way more times than you are. Make multiple wings to this dungeon, please. If it means I get more gameplay content, I am happy to see the same tile set, because the tile set is fucking pretty.
Yep.
It's always like that. So I suppose it's maybe just a rethinking of how content is like mapped out. I don't know. Yeah. I guess I'll say with the games you're playing, what ones make you the most happy? What ones make you the least happy? It's very easy to find examples of live services not going great.
Yeah.
But is there actually one that you feel pretty good about? I mean, maybe, I know Genshin Impact has had its dramas, but they sure have pumped content.
Oh, they pump that so full of content. But then they have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employees and all the money in the world. Like, but then I suppose that's a good point. You do have to ask, how did they handle rapid growth?
Yeah.
Did they have rapid growth as part of their plan and go, we know this is going to absolutely explode, so we will have the pipeline in place to just slot in 1,000 artists? Was that part of their plan the whole time? Whereas it clearly wasn't for these guys. Maybe?
Yeah, it's like if I compare World of Warcraft to Genshin Impact. Yeah. Genshin Impact has got multiple times more staff than World of Warcraft.
Yep.
And I guess that's quite a funny thing when you think about, Genshin Impact, relatively new game, World of Warcraft, many billion-dollar product for many, many, many years.
Yep.
There you go. Taku save the world, I guess. And on the bombshell of their company motto, that's it for today's video. Let me know what live services are good for you, what ones are bad, down below. That's it. See you next time.